There's a phrase people use when they stop asking questions. I'm fine. Not good. Not bad. Just fine. It sounds harmless, neutral, stable, but historically, fine was never a destination. It was a pause. Today, it's a conclusion. When nothing feels urgent, nothing feels worth examining. When discomfort fades into routine, awareness shuts down quietly. This is the signal, not collapse, not crisis, not burnout. Stability. The kind that doesn't inspire curiosity, the kind that doesn't provoke resistance, the kind that doesn't demand change. People still wake up, still work, still engage, still respond. Life continues. But depth disappears. You stop noticing friction. Stop questioning patterns. Stop feeling the need to interrupt momentum. Everything works just enough. And that's the danger. When systems fail loudly, humans react. When they fail silently, humans adapt. Modern environments are exceptionally good at producing fine. Not fulfillment. Not meaning. Just enough comfort to prevent disruption. Enough stimulation to avoid boredom. Enough distraction to avoid reflection. Enough structure to avoid collapse. Nothing hurts badly enough to resist. Nothing breaks badly enough to fix. And slowly, without force, people internalize the message. This is normal. The strange becomes familiar. The artificial becomes expected. The constrained becomes invisible. You don't feel controlled. You feel adjusted. That's why this state is so stable. People don't fight what doesn't hurt. They don't resist what feels manageable. They don't question what everyone else accepts. And once fine becomes the baseline, anything outside it feels unnecessary or extreme. Silence feels excessive. Disengagement feels irresponsible. Awareness feels heavy. Normality becomes the most effective containment strategy there is, because it doesn't look like control. It looks like life. Humans don't seek truth first. They seek stability. Long before meaning, the brain prioritizes predictability. Patterns that repeat feel safer than patterns that make sense. What's familiar feels survivable, even when it's hollow. This is how fine becomes powerful. Not because it's good, but because it's predictable. The brain reads consistency as safety, routine as shelter, normality as protection. Once life settles into a steady rhythm, questioning starts to feel unnecessary, even disruptive. Why examine something that isn't hurting? Why interrupt a system that appears to function? This is where adaptation replaces awareness. The mind stops asking, "Is this right?" and starts asking, "Is this normal?" That shift is subtle, but irreversible once it settles. Normality doesn't announce itself as a standard. It spreads through repetition. The same schedules, the same conversations, the same behaviors mirrored back through everyone else. When enough people accept a pattern, resistance begins to feel irrational. You notice it when discomfort fades without being resolved, when dissatisfaction turns into background noise, when questioning feels heavier than compliance. The brain doesn't fight this. It welcomes it, because uncertainty costs energy. Reflection costs effort. Awareness creates friction. Normality removes friction. It tells the mind, "This is how things are. There's nothing to solve. Move on." And once that message is internalized, something else happens. Curiosity declines. Contrast disappears. Depth flattens. Not dramatically, not suddenly. Gradually you still think, but not deeply. You still feel, but not intensely. Everything becomes moderated, safe, manageable, contained. This is why people defend normality so fiercely, not because it's fulfilling, but because it protects them from confronting what's missing. A life labeled fine doesn't demand reflection. It doesn't force reorientation. It doesn't threaten identity. It allows people to keep moving without stopping to ask where they're going. And that's exactly why systems prefer it. Normality is efficient. It doesn't resist, It doesn't disrupt. It doesn't require explanation. People operating inside fine don't push boundaries. They don't withdraw attention. They don't interrupt flow. They function. And a functioning human doesn't look like someone who needs to change anything. That's the pattern. Not oppression, not force. Comfortable adaptation. And once the brain accepts that comfort equals safety, anything that challenges it starts to feel wrong. A system doesn't need to suppress resistance once people stop imagining alternatives. That's the final function of normality. Not to convince, not to threaten, but to set. When fine becomes the accepted state, control becomes invisible. There's no friction to push against. No pain sharp enough to react to. No urgency demanding attention. Everything works just enough. And that's why it holds. People don't rebel against what feels livable. They don't resist what feels familiar. They don't question what everyone else accepts. Normality neutralizes disruption before it forms. Silence feels unnecessary. Depth feels excessive. Disengagement feels irresponsible. Anything outside the baseline starts to look extreme. Those who withdraw are seen as unstable. Those who question are seen as difficult. Those who step back are seen as out of sync. Not dangerous, just inconvenient. That's how containment completes itself. The system no longer needs to enforce behavior. It only needs to define what's normal. Once that line is drawn, people regulate themselves. They adjust expectations. Lower contrast, smooth out friction. They stop asking what's missing and start optimizing what's there. And over time, something critical disappears. The ability to recognize loss. When everything feels acceptable, nothing feels worth defending. When discomfort is muted, awareness dulls. When depth is unnecessary, meaning erodes quietly. This isn't stagnation. It's stabilization at a lower resolution. Life continues. Days pass. Tasks complete. But the question never returns. Is this enough? Because fine doesn't invite answers. It closes the loop. And that's the most effective form of control there is. Not force. Not fear, but a world that no longer gives you a reason to stop and look again. Before you leave, take a second to check if you resubscribed. Most people think they are. They usually aren't.